And now, introducing your Mutable Instruments Classics lineup. First, we have Pixie, the macro oscillator based on Platts. We have Resonate, the modal synthesizer based on rings. Fuse, cross modulator based on warps. Razor, the dual multi-mode filter based on blades. Currents, the tidal modulator based on tides. Cloaks, the quad DCA based on veils. Boris, the contact mic based on beautiful music themes of ears. Monocle, VC polarizer based on blinds. Dice, the random sampler based on marbles. Waves, the liquid filter based on ripples. Scenes, the segment generator based on stages. And Cumulus, the texture synthesizer based on the all-powerful, all-famous clouds.
Welcome to this video, where we'll be taking a look at the Afterlater Audio's Mutable Instruments Classics full-size clones series for Mutable Instruments modules. But since you've probably heard most of these to death, we'll be doing something a little bit different with these modules. Because if you look at the back of the module, you'll see a familiar logo there. And that's because these module panels have been designed by yours truly, Robots Are Ed. So instead of talking about all the different modules and what they can do and things like that, I'm just going to talk about the design process for these modules in this series, and I'm going to do that while patching something up. So for designing these modules, I had some goals for them, of course, and I also had some constraints that I had to work with. For one, I wanted to pay homage to the Mutable Instruments designs by using certain elements from them or just kind of ideas and themes from each one to apply to this Mutable Instruments Classics version. And my goal was to make the module designs consistent and straightforward enough that if you didn't know the module well or haven't used it in a while, you could pick it up again really quickly with these specific lines that go to the corresponding knobs and just little details like that that help you kind of gain your footing with the modules quicker. Then I had some constraints, of course, which were these had to be black panel, not silver panel, though we did end up doing silver panel for Pixie and Resonate. Now each of those panels you have to buy separate, but it comes with 2 additional white knobs to replace the colored knobs if you don't care for those on those modules. Now I had to use these black PCB module panels, and the colors were limited to the white and the gold. So I wanted to still add that Mutable Instruments color in. So I figured we'd do that with the knobs and kind of pay homage to the older Mutable Instrument knobs with that pinkish reddish colored knob and that tealish blue colored knob. And now we had some great samples of these knobs, but we wanted to go a little bit lighter with them, and in production they turned into this minty green, so you get a little bit of a Christmas color, but it's like a minty enough green that maybe it's not too Christmassy, but it turns out nice and premium looking, and I think it still works to pay homage to Mutable. And it's also worth noting that the knob color placements on all of these modules is derived from the parent Mutable Instrument modules of the same name. That's why Currents has 2 of the teal knobs, and that's why Cumulus has so many colored knobs, because the original Clouds had so many knobs. But because of the color constraints, we also really had constraints with the module panels, like on Resonate here, I have to specify for green, orange, and red on there rather than just using the colors on the aluminum panel. But I took the design a step further than the mutable, where they would usually just use symbols. I always added text to it, except for on warps here, or fuse. But you could see everything else I added pretty detailed listing of the features corresponding to those specific buttons or knobs. And if you look at all the mutable modules, most of them have a specific little icon next to the name. So I created a similar little icon that demonstrates the name or the previous mutable name to give it a little bit more homage in that sense. So we have some plat braids there on Pixie. We have some resonating, rippling waves there on Resonate. Fuse, we have individual objects slowly fusing together as it goes across. For Razor, we have this dual blade-like shape. For Currents, we have some nice paisley-looking liquidy water there for nice slow tides of water. Cloaks, we have a nice little cloak there. Cumulus, we have some beautiful little clouds, of course. Scenes is the stage is set, I guess I'll say. For waves, I didn't want to get too close to the resonate with that rippling, so I just made it more waves rather than ripply. And then dice, just kind of playing on marbles or pachinko marbles. A kind of Western equivalent is dice, and therefore that I kind of sniped some dice. We don't have one for monocle here, which is just a 4 HP 2-channel blinds. And then on Oris, I kind of upped the design a little bit, where instead of just the general spiral pattern here, I pulled the mandala here from Clouds, which also shows up on many other mutable modules. But I kind of worked that in and filled in all the broken spots from it being in the graphics and added some additional lines and stuff here and kind of sewed it into the original Mutable Music Things ears design. So that one, without being able to use the colors, I was able to give a nice homage to Mutable Instruments. Now, of course, there were a few little oopsie mistake, almost Easter eggs you could find on a couple of these modules here that should be fixed on future runs of the modules here. As you'll see on Resonate here, it says red 3 here when it should be 4. Now, what was interesting with some of the modules is I hadn't actually used those immutable modules before. So I was kind of flying in a little bit blind with that as far as just having to read the manual, watch probably the div kit video, and go from there. So of course there's some bits of the designs here where if I were to design them now, I would definitely reconsider some word choices, among other things. And I kind of really wish I was able to design the Pixie label after the latest Platts firmware update, which came out right after this module launched, so it was too late to change the panel, but I figured it would have been a great way to show all those extra features right on the panel. But, oh well. I also wish I knew a little bit more on Pixie before designing it. As far as the secondary features while holding the buttons, I was hoping I could add that in a little bit better like I did on Dice. And I thought it was just really beneficial on Resonate, the Rings clone, to just write out the poly and the type modes right on there so you know what you're getting, because I don't know how many times I have to look up which one is modal and which one is carpless. And then we have modules like cloaks here, or veils. which were pretty straightforward that I didn't really need to know the module as much. But then there's ones like marbles and blades or stages, which was like, yeah, I really kind of wish I had played around with the module first. That's okay. I think they turned out alright. We can see on currents, I had to add little icons here. Or I wanted to add little icons here to keep it consistent with the other side. So I added a little snail shell, and then we got a turtle shell, and then a note. Another little oopsie here is the 3 seconds, 4 seconds, which should be 4 seconds, 8 seconds there. And the other little thing was I forgot the line here, which connects to the routing. I just forgot the line, I forgot the text there. I don't know what I was thinking. Now, of course, while working on this, I came across other constraints, which was things like how far apart can the lines be from each other, to where some of these icons had to be enlarged a little bit to fit better in there, because they would just print over each other on the lines and things like that. Definitely learned a lot on this project. And you notice that every input has a circle around it, while every audio input has the full rectangle around the text as well. So you'll notice that on any of the audio inputs, it has the rectangle around everything. But then for all the outputs, we have them all in gold, which makes it nice and easy to know where your inputs and outputs are. And if you look through all these designs with the gold lines going from the CV inputs to the knobs, I think is super helpful, especially for things like freeze on Cumulus, or the jacks that aren't quite lined up with the knobs, like basically anything on clouds. Whereas Razor, it's pretty nice and straightforward. On Cloaks, it's pretty nice and straightforward. But then other ones I had to get a little creative with. And then another little thing was, if you look at scenes here, I say off here, where really I mean blinking, it's going to do the loop. And then one of the challenges with these that I would never have thought it would be, and I don't know if I 100% passed on this even, is just where the text goes in relation to the knobs. Do they go above the knob? Do they go below the knob? I put some above, some below. It depended on the panel designs and kind of where they fit, but I also tried to make it visual so the knob is not blocking the text when you're looking at it from whatever angle. Patching things, filling time, filling space. Do something I don't do all that often is double up our splitter. Let's get more variation to, say, our position and our size. And on some of these modules, I had to get a little bit creative with my choice to be a bit more descriptive with the type of how do we fit the type in there. Like, just look at scenes with this shape time that I just kind of barely and luckily fit in there due to the word length. Or how tight it is in currents around that center button. Or how jammed up that area is on dice where those center bottom 3 knobs are, and just all that type I had to fit in there while there's all that open space all around it. That was nice and fun. And I have to say, the knob on fuse turned out really well, I think, as far as for glowing enough and showing those colors through. Even though it's nothing like the original Warp's knob, I think it gets the job done. It doesn't look too cheapy or anything. Now, I really wanted the series to work really well together as well, so I added these bars to make them sit really nicely together in the grouping, and it kind of makes you want to get more than one. And they just pair so nicely in your rack. Even if you have all black with your rack, the gold accents work really nice. And if you really want all white knobs, just keep emailing and bugging Lenny at After Later, and he'll probably put up just the white knobs for sale in the shop. Now let's just play around. And that is the Mutable Instruments Classics series by After Later Audio. And now here's another little jam I made only using this case.